Hark, now hear the sailor's cry. Smell the sea and feel the sky. Let your soul and spirit fly into the mystic. Van Morrison. It is a curious situation that the sea, from which life first arose, should now be threatened by the activities of one form of that life. But the sea, though changed in a sinister way, will continue to exist. The threat is rather to life itself. Rachel Carson.
Everyone says they love the ocean, right? Give them a way to get to the ocean, they're all about it. Exploring shorelines, swimming, boating, just sitting on the beach watching sunrise, sunset. We have this deep, seemingly primal connection to the ocean.
People love the ocean because of how beautiful and calming it is. Even though I only had the ocean for 5 years of my life, I was like landlocked in Nevada, and I was like, I have to make it back there because it's so pretty, so calm, so many beautiful animals, and just amazing things that you want to keep discovering.
For me, it's similar. I grew up far away from the ocean, and we always went for vacations to the ocean. And to this day, ocean makes me think of vacation. And quite often, when I'm out there, I realize I'm living here for decades now, and it still feels like being on vacation. I have open space and fresh air, things to discover. It's just discovery. It's digging up stuff, seeing who lives down there, what lives down there. And even if I've seen it dozens of times before, every single time, it's exciting finding a snail, a crab, a jellyfish, any of those critters again.
Discovery is what being a kid is all about, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
I never grew up. I'm still running around trying to pick up cool things.
Yeah, I always make that joke that, every 5-year-old goes through that phase where they wanted to be a marine biologist, and us marine biologists just never actually grew out of that.
Nope.
The Gulf of Maine is an area of the North Atlantic, roughly between Cape Cod and Nova Scotia. You have cold water, extreme tidal mixing, and rugged bottom, and they combine to make it one of the most productive parts of the Atlantic. It's hugely important to the economy because of the fish and shellfish it supports. And you have no business talking about the Gulf of Maine without singing the praises of the lobster industry, one of the most valuable fisheries in the world.
It's not the economic value, but for Maine specifically lobster, it's also a way of life. That for generations, those small businesses, families supported themselves by lobstering. So it's not only a job which goes away, but it's really a way of life which then goes away if lobstering is no longer an option.
The ocean and the Gulf of Maine, they matter to a lot of people, don't they? Both to make a living and for general quality of life. But the Gulf of Maine is facing some major environmental challenges.
Foremost challenge in the Gulf of Maine is certainly climate change, where it's now shown that the Gulf of Maine is warming faster than 99% of the Earth's ocean. Therefore, this is kind of ground zero for climate change.
And I think also not even just climate change, but effects of people in general, right? So whether that be runoff from land, from pollution, or even like invasive species, like we have a big problem with here, that some of the invasive species here harm soft-shell clams, which is another huge thing that people fish for here. So there's a lot of ways that people are negatively impacting the Gulf of Maine, for sure.
Another big effect of global warming in the Gulf of Maine is acidification.
So acidification is a really complex process. So basically what happens is atmospheric carbon dioxide, CO2, interacts with the water in such a way that it creates an acid. Acids, things like lemon juice. If you think about squeezing a lemon in your eyeball, that doesn't feel good. So that's kind of the process of acidification and what it could eventually lead to. And one of the most direct things that we as scientists see with acidification is challenges of especially animals that form shells. So clams, things like that, are going to have a harder time creating their shells. And so that's one really direct impact of ocean acidification.
There's an interesting thing happening right now with ocean acidification. Of course, all those animals with a hard outer shell are affected, but many of those eat each other. And I think it's more acidic. For example, the crustacean shell gets weaker. Those crustaceans feed on mussels. If the shell of the crustacean gets weaker faster, the mussels win. If, on the other hand, the mussel shells get weaker faster than the crustacean shell, and the crustaceans can eat those weaker mussels faster, and the crustaceans win. So by this weakening of all different kind of shells and many different phyla, the complete ecology gets changed. Who's eating whom and who's safe from whom. So who survives at the end, we'll find out.
There are direct impacts of warming and acidification from an economic perspective.
Of course, the direct impact, if a certain bivalve gets weaker in its shells and gets eaten more by some predatory crustaceans, the fishery for those bivalves disappears. And then what fascinates me as a scientist most is all those unknowns. It's not just this happens, therefore this happens, therefore the next thing happens. It's all interconnected and we don't understand many of those pieces yet. So we have no clue what we are in for yet.
It's well documented that fisheries are moving north, and the long-term outlook for lobstering is dark. Just where are we headed?
I think we'll need to adapt because when lobsters, other species disappear from the Gulf of Maine, others move from the south in here. We find more and more blue crabs in the Gulf of Maine. Some of the lobstermen report finding seahorses in their lobster traps. I know where they can live on catching seahorses, but if there is one day a viable blue crab fishery, of course, that's then a new way of making money. Actually, Iceland demonstrates that in a perfect way, where lots of the species which we have here are moving north and then show up in Iceland. And the rock crabs, which are native here in Maine, they showed up in Iceland as an invasive species. And very quickly did the Icelandic fishery switch to catching rock crabs. They're selling them now, and they have a new fishery. There is blue mussels, actually invasive in South Africa. And South Africa started a blue mussel fishery just to take advantage of those new species there. And therefore, it certainly works.
Living with so much environmental uncertainty raises serious questions, both to us as individuals and as a society. So what can we do?
You know, as a young woman, I've considered not having kids because I don't know what kind of world I would be bringing them into, you know, and is that fair for me? But I'm definitely angry, but I try to let my motivation to fix things kind of take away that anger.
I think what needs to be done is based on all the data which is out there fairly straightforward. We need to decrease the CO2 output, but we need to decrease the amount of greenhouse gases which we put out there. It gets more difficult if we get to the point, how do we do that? Because we certainly want a certain standard of living which comes with releasing greenhouse gases. And where the biggest bang for the buck is, that is difficult. And there is no magic bullet. So I think at the end, it will be many different initiatives, projects, directions in parallel, which can get us there. I think the best I can do is educating people, making them aware that they then can decide what is the best solution for them. But only if they're aware of the problem, can they then do the next step and become active.
People in general, as long as they take small steps and do them with kindness, whether that be kindness towards fellow human beings or towards the planet, right? Because you're not going to make a huge change in your life overnight. That's impossible, right? You can't start a diet and expect to lose 100 pounds by just, one day saying, okay, I'm not doing this. You need to make small changes in your life. So maybe you walk to the grocery store once a week. Maybe you take your own cup to the coffee shop or take your own bag to the grocery store.
No, the Gulf of Maine will not die. There will always be Gulf of Maine in one form or another. So nature itself will always be there, and it doesn't care in which way it goes. Humans don't deal well with change. And if we can prevent that change, it makes our life so much easier.